Hi everyone and welcome to Newegg TV. My name is Paul and today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this motherboard from Gigabyte. This is the Gigabyte H61M-HD2. This is a micro ATX form factor board and it actually measures slightly smaller than the standard form factor for micro ATX, but I'll give you guys a measurement once I take it out of the box. It's based on the H61 chipset from Intel. That's a 6 series chipset. It does support socket 1155 CPUs, and that will support both the Sandy Bridge CPUs as well as the newer Ivy Bridge CPUs. It does have PCI Express Gen 3 support, and that is only with the newer Ivy Bridge CPUs. This is an HD series motherboard, so it does have high-definition digital display outputs such as HDMI, DVI. It's Windows 8 ready, of course. It's a UD or Ultra Durable Series motherboard from Gigabyte. Features all solid capacitors. Again, support for Intel 2nd and 3rd generation core processors, the H61 chipset, humidity protection by way of the new glass fabric PCB construction. Also features a dual BIOS, so you do have a backup you can switch to if, for instance, you have a power outage during a BIOS update, that sort of thing. Or you could, for instance, have one BIOS set up with one set of configuration settings and another BIOS set up with another set of configurations, so you can switch back and forth between them. Here's a little bit more information on the back about the ultra durable construction, so you get humidity protection, electrostatic protection, power failure protection, as well as high temperature protection. And then also, of course, some more details about the board, for instance, the layout right there. I'm going to be walking you guys through that so you can get a better look at it as well. That said, let's go ahead and take a look at the accessories. Inside the box, we have some serial ATA cables, an input-output shield, the motherboard itself, of course, as well as some documentation. So first off here, we have our Gigabyte, let me flip it right side up, your drivers and utility DVD. It's generally best to go to the Gigabyte website to download the latest versions of the drivers and utilities that are on this disk. However, it is handy to keep on hand, particularly if you need to load your network interface card driver so you can connect to the internet to download the updated versions, of course. Here's your H61M-HD2 instruction manual, so you should definitely keep this on hand while you're doing your build. I'll just show you guys a few of the items here. Layout of the board, of course. We get a block diagram, which I really enjoy that Gigabyte likes to include these. So for instance, this will show you that from your CPU you have one PCI Express X16 slot. You also get a couple PCI Express X1 slots, which are controlled by the H61 chipset, as well as a lot of other I/O that's connected all through there. And then also here we have detailed specs on all of the components that are integrated into the motherboard, and I'll be again walking you through those in just a moment. Here's your I/O shield. It's a simple metal. It's got some imprints here to tell you which connection is which, and definitely remember to install that before you install the motherboard. And then finally here, a couple serial ATA cables. They're a light blue in color, and one of them has a 90-degree angled plug on one end, and then the other one has two straight plugs. Two of those total, and they'll both be SATA revision 2 or revision 3 or backwards compatible SATA revision 1 compatible. And here's a closer look at the motherboard itself. As previously mentioned, we have a micro ATX form factor. However, it is side to side, going to measure actually a little bit shorter than that. So it's just shy of 7 inches side to side and just shy of 9 inches top to bottom. If you're more into the metric system, that is 22.6 centimeters top to bottom by 17.4 centimeters left to right. For the color scheme, we have a blue PCB in the back. We also have some white and light blue components scattered throughout, and then some gray mixed in as well, such as on the H61 chipset heatsink right there. Let me flip around to the back here to give you guys another look at the PCB. Again, blue, as well as the back plate for your socket right there, the CPU socket. And then the heatsink, at least the H61 heatsink, is held on by plastic push pins. When it comes to fan headers, you have two of them total. One CPU fan header right there, that's a 4-pin PWM. Also a 4-pin PWM system fan header right down here in the lower left, so you can attach one case fan to this motherboard directly. Next up, I'm going to go over the board in detail. And bear in mind, guys, this is a bit more of a budget board, so the idea here is that you're going to get fewer features on the board, but it is coming at a much lower price point. So make sure if you're looking at this board that you're looking to get just the features that you need. So starting off down here, we actually have our serial ATA connectivity. So there's your H61 chipset that's right underneath that gray heatsink. One of the differences between H61 and some of the higher end ones like Z68 or Z77 is you actually don't get any serial ATA revision 3 capability. So these are all SATA Rev 2 3 gigabits per second ports. Still going to work just fine for any mechanical hard drives you have out there. They might limit SSD performance a little bit depending on what SSD you might be connecting. So again, make sure that if you're purchasing this board, you're getting it for the use that you're intending to use it for. And if you are going to go with an SSD, I'd recommend a SATA Rev 2 just to make sure you're not going to bottleneck that, or at least bear in mind SATA Rev 2. Okay, next up we have our inputs and outputs, or our front panel connectors, I should say, right here. There's a little chart below them that will tell you which one is which, so that will aid you in connecting those. Next to that, we have some USB 2.0. Here's another difference between the H61 chipset and some of the higher-end ones. You get USB 2.0 only on this board, although you do get plenty of connectivity. So 2 USB 2.0 front panel headers right there, and each one of those you can connect to control 2 actual physical USB 2.0 ports. There's the system fan header I already mentioned. Front panel audio connector, and I should mention that this board can do 7.1 channel audio. However, the analog outputs on the back will only allow you to do up to 5.1. If you do want 7.1, you will need to connect that front panel header and enable that in the BIOS. Right above the front panel audio, we have our audio codec chipset right there, and that's a Realtek ALC 887. Again, can do 5.1 or 7.1 channel audio. Next to that, on the right, we have our PCI Express connectivity. So we have a total of 3 PCI Express slots, 2 X1 slots right there, the shorter white ones, and then we have a full-length PCI Express X16 slot. So if you're going to go with a discrete video card for this system, you definitely, well, that's pretty much the only place you can plug it in, but you do get full connectivity between that and your CPU. And again, if you're using an Ivy Bridge processor, that will run at PCI Express Gen 3 speeds. Bear in mind the 2 lower ports here, the PCI Express X1 slots, are going to be running at Gen 2 speeds because they are routed through the chipset. There's another look at the chipset, heatsink of course. Next to that you have your dual BIOS chips on the board right there, and you can control those via the BIOS. Moving up the side of the board, we have our 24-pin main motherboard power connector right here, the white port, so make sure you connect that with your power supply. Next to that, we have our Ddr3 slots. So you get 2 of those. It is dual channel capable, so I'd recommend buying a pair of Ddr3 DIMMs that are matched so you can take advantage of that dual channel capability and the added bandwidth. You can do up to 8 gig DIMMs in each slot, so that gives you a total capacity of up to 16 gigabytes. And it can do overclock speeds up to DDR1333. Bear in mind you'll want non-ECC memory in there, and it does support Intel's XMP or Extreme Memory profiles, so you can plug in your memory speeds again in the UEFI BIOS and make sure that you're running at the speeds that the sticks are rated for. Next to that, we have our CPU socket. So again, that's 1155. You can install a second generation, or Intel's second gen core processor, aka Sandy Bridge, in there. Will also function just fine with a 3rd generation Intel core processor, which are also known as Ivy Bridge processors. Next to that, you can see some of the power delivery components right there, the chokes and the MOSFETs, of course, as well as the capacitors. And then, of course, can't forget your 4-pin supplemental CPU power connector right up there. And again, make sure you connect that with the connector on your power supply. Moving here to the inputs and outputs on the side of the board that would, generally speaking, stick out the back of your case. You have a PS2 combo port right there, so you can plug in either a mouse or a keyboard. You have 2 USB 2.0 ports here, 2 more here, and 2 more here. So if you use both of those front panel connectors and all these, you can get up to 10 USB 2.0 ports on the board. You have 3 video out connectors right here. And again, the iGPU or integrated GPU that's in your Ivy Bridge or Sandy Bridge processor, assuming you buy a SKU that has that, which most of them do, but there are a couple that don't, so make sure you pay attention to that. So if you do go with that, you can use these video outs and you can run your system without the need for a discrete video card. Discrete video card, of course, will give you better graphics performance, so especially if you're going to go for gaming, I would recommend checking that out. But you get a dual-link DVI connector, you get a VGI connector, and you get an HDMI connector, and then HDMI can do both audio and video. And when we're talking about display resolution, the HDMI and the DVI can do up to 1920 by 1200. Again, the USB 2.0 ports there. You also have a gigabit Ethernet connector provided by Realtek. And then finally, you have your analog microphone input as well as audio outputs. And that is going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, this has been the GIGABYTE H61M-HD2 motherboard featuring the H61 chipset and the 1155 socket for second or third generation Intel Core processors. I'm Paul with Newegg TV, and if you enjoyed today's video, you can find more on our Newegg YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe for more tech videos, and we'll see you next time on Newegg TV.